I think they're getting some food in the back.
Okay. Monica, how late he was going to be?
He said about 20 minutes. He was coming from an MBTC actually, so probably navigating Route 50.
Okay.
So we are live right now. So.
All right.
So
So
I'm being told if you could turn your volume up a little bit.
right now, okay.
You do go in and out a little bit.
Maybe I'll come closer. I can't. It's turned all the way.
I think
How's
you're
that?
good.
I could actually talk a little louder, but I don't know if that helps going in and out. But can you hear me okay right now?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you well. Yes, ma'am. It's just you go in and out.
All right. Well, I'll try to. That will be more than
We're ready when you are, Carrie.
really, because it's pretty loud. It's pretty loud in that room.
That's why I said we're ready when you are.
Right. I'm going to hit a gavel.
Everyone, Chair Randall is calling the meeting to order.
We're calling them into order.
Chair Randall is calling the meeting to order. Following you.
Jeff McKay, I can hear you talking. I'm going to call the April 21st, 2022 Northern Virginia Transportation Authority meeting to order. Hi, everybody. I am actually in Mississippi at a National Association of Black Elected Officials conference. So I'm sorry I can't be there with you all. I'm looking forward to the next meeting where I will see you in person, and I haven't even met all the new authority member yet. So I look forward to see you all in person next month. But in the meantime, would somebody and one of the staff members go on and take the roll, please? Take attendance.
Yes, Chair Randall. Chair Randall.
I am here.
Councilmember Snyder. Chairman McKay. Here. Chair Wheeler.
Here.
Chair Christall.
Here.
Mayor Wilson. Here. Mayor Davis Younger.
Here.
Mayor Rischel.
Here.
Mayor Meyer. Senator Boyskow.
Here.
Delegate Laurent. Here. Mr. Bedell. Here. Ms. Hines. Mr. Cole. Here. Mayor Wood. Present. Mr. Lynch. Here. And Mr. Horsley. Here. Chair Randall, we have a quorum.
Wonderful, wonderful. So when Mr. Snyder arrives, I will hand the meeting over to him. But in the meantime, we are going to do the approval of the March 10th, 2022 meeting notes. If everyone has seen their notes and for the people who were there, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion's been made to, so moved. Who made that motion?
Mr. Cole.
Mr. Cole, is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Who made the second?
Senator Boyskow.
Senator Boyskow. Hi, Senator. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Hey, I'm well.
Good, good. Discussion on the agenda on the meetings from last month. All right, all in favor of approving the agenda of the meetings, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye. All opposed? And any abstentions?
Attention, Madam Chair, this is Chair Crystal.
Okay, Chair Crystal abstains. I abstained as well because I missed that meeting. Any other abstentions?
Chair McKay abstains.
Mr. McKay abstains. All right, seeing none, that motion will pass with 3 abstentions. Chair Crystal, Chair McKay, and Chair Randall will abstain. Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda are the really important action items, which are the regional revenue. Well, actually, they're all the budget action items that are on this agenda. So it's a really important meeting. So Mr. Longi, for item 4, for 5, and for 6, we will go back and have a motion on them. But first, I would pass the Meeting over to you, Mr. Longi, to have the discussion or to do the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Randall. I believe Mayor Rochelle, as the Chair of the Finance Committee, had some opening comments on the budget.
Wonderful. Mayor Rochelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First,
Thank
I would
you.
like to note that Mayor Wood and Councilmember Snyder have joined the Finance Committee, so a great big welcome to both of them. There are 3 budget actions recommended by the Finance Committee after several months of discussion and guidance. The regional revenue budget has about $283 million in revenue, of which $201 million is designated for FY23 project appropriations for 11 previously approved projects. The proposed appropriations include $24.6 million in forward appropriations requested by member jurisdictions. The local distribution fund budget has distributions projected to be $119 million for FY23. Through FY23, total 30% distributions are projected to reach about $954 million. This means that total distributions since the passage of HB 2313 will very likely exceed $1 billion by
Wow.
FY24.
Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah.
For the operating budget, the finance committee recommended a budget of $3.8 million. This operating budget includes 3 new positions. Several other initiatives focus on achieving the authority's strategic plan goal of implementing in-house modeling capacity, as well as the ability to address increased planning and financial workloads. The budget also supports developing capacity to receive and manage federal funds, as well as protect the MBTA from duplicate project payments. The authority's investment portfolio is expected to generate $20 million in earnings in FY23. So now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Longi to provide more details on each budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Longi. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. Mr. Longi.
Thank you. The first budget under discussion tonight, as recommended by the Finance Committee, is the proposed FY23 Regional Revenue Fund budget. This is essentially a $200 million budget, and I'll ask Jonathan to go ahead and put up attachment A on the screen. For those of us working remotely, it's a little more difficult. My apologies for not being there tonight. I'd be in person, but it's my turn to experience COVID, so I'm in the isolation box. The staff report is tied to this attachment with notes on the far right column. I'm not going to go into all of the notes in depth. The Finance Committee has been working on all 3 of these budgets for several months, but I'll just do the highlights. The first section in the budget is the revenues. You can see there's a large increase in revenues from the prior fiscal year. This is mostly driven by our sales tax coming in actually a lot better than the pessimistic estimates we had done for 2022. We now have a full year of the grantor's tax being implemented. And additionally, the future financing, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later, doesn't have as big a negative impact on the revenue as it did in 22. And finally, the investment portfolio is expected to bring in $20 million, as $15 million larger than FY22. I'm going to, as in addressing the revenues, I'm going to touch on the that negative number, which you normally don't see in a revenue line. This is something that, as the authority adopted forward appropriations, the auditors wanted to make sure we had a mechanism in place to make sure that, quite frankly, we don't get over our own skis as far as adopting projects, because we are adopting them, and this proposed budget has 24, 25, fiscal 24 and 25 projects being included in 23. So this is a mechanism to make sure that we account for those forward appropriations. It basically means that we're all of our director of transportations to receive a magic wand and be able to make all the problems with all the projects go away, and all of them were to spend all of their money in fiscal 23, where would we be short? And we would be short approximately $15 million. I think we all know that's not going to happen, but I am obligated to let you know about that each time we adopt these budgets. Moving through from revenues to expenditures, the first couple of expenditures are the debt service. Then we have $88,000, which is modeling and licensing support for the modeling initiative, strategic plan initiative. Probably the most important number here that everybody's looking for is the $201 million. And Jonathan, you can put the appropriation schedule back up. These are the 11 projects that are being proposed to have appropriations as part of this budget action. They are the last 9 projects from the fiscal 18 through 23 inaugural 6-year program, and 2 forward appropriations that were requested by Arlington County and Prince William County. Continuing through to the attachment A, as we move through, we have total expenditures of $206 million, transfers and carry forwards. Transfer out to the operating fund is the proposed transfer to support the operating budget for fiscal 23. And then that other negative line, the $73 million that you see there, is again part of that forward appropriation process that we use to make sure that while we are moving projects forward, we are not doing it to an excessive amount of funds. This forward appropriation process, by the way, in lieu of using a $200 million 20-year bond cycle, is saving the authority instead of using a typical bond cycle to move those projects forward using our own balance sheet, is allowing us to save $200 million over the life cycle of a 20-year bond process. So it's an example of where we're not only making money with the investment portfolio, but we're saving it on the debt issuance side and being able to move, at this point, any project forward based on the timing that they think that they can start using the money in. With that, I will, that's all the presentation I had. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Longi. So I'll start with the question. So you said the grantor's tax that's been a year now, but it's been a year since the implementation, since basically the second implementation of the grantor's tax, correct?
The second implementation was fiscal 22. This is the first year that the full rate is being imposed.
But isn't the rate now lower than it was before?
It is lower than prior to the WMATA diversion.
Exactly.
But Governor Northam's administration phased it in the first year of its return.
So then is it up to the amount that it was before the WMATA diversion, or whatever, or is it as large as it's going to get?
Well, it's as large as it's going to get under the current legislation.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
But as large as it's going to get does not get us back to the pre-WMATA diversion time.
Yeah, I think the rate is still about 5 cents below what it was prior.
That's right. That's my understanding as well. Ms. Beckman, I cannot see the room, obviously, so I don't know who might have their hand up for a question.
And we are working on that, Chair Randall. We may have to unplug it for a quick minute and then try to start it again. But Chairman McKay has a question.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My question is kind of related to what Phyllis was asking on. For one thing, the grantor's tax, of course, looks a lot higher here, but it's also, that's not sustainable. Anyone who knows what's going on in real estate knows that that's not sustainable. So the rate really is important. But my question is the same question about sales tax. I mean, we see that bump up by, almost $30 million. What was it pre FY 2022? Because again, looking at the last 2 years, it's like a roller coaster, what's going on in the economy. So what is a normalized number going into FY 2022 look like? Just to give us a perspective on, we're obviously doing real well in FY 2023, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that that might not be a permanent situation.
Chair McKay, that's a good question. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would actually go to fiscal 2020, which of course was the first year of the pandemic and the second year that we had internet sales tax as part of the sales tax revenue. So in fiscal 19, we saw roughly an 8% increase in sales tax revenue. At that time, pre-pandemic, we estimated that about 6.5%, 7% of that was attributed to the extension of sales tax onto internet sales. Rolling forward, we immediately then reduced our revenue estimates, as I think everybody did for fiscal 20, because of the pandemic, found out that actually the General Assembly, having adopted the expanded sales tax to include internet sales, was really a savior for everybody during the pandemic, in that we saw a net revenue gain, where that number that you're looking at for fiscal 22 actually is an old number that was very pessimistic at the time. So to answer your question, I would normalize sales tax at closer to 195 million in like the 3 previous years. We are seeing a good healthy bump. We also the authority sales tax does not apply to food and beverage for human consumption. So, the General Assembly changes, if were they to occur on sales tax on food, would not impact our revenue line.
Okay, and my real reason for asking that question is, it's hard to normalize these numbers based on where we've been over the last couple of years. And while this is good, I'm not necessarily sure that this is permanent, given what's going on in the economy. And so I think we just have to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
We are working on fresh revenue estimates that will be going to the Finance Committee in May. And they'll be part of determining the Pago number for the upcoming 2-year update to the 6-year plan. I would like to clarify along the same line that you were noting, Chair McKay, the grantor's tax change is because when the grantor's tax was initiated or reestablished in 2022, Governor Northam subsequently went back and reduced the rate temporarily for, I believe, the first 8 or 9 months of fiscal 22. So what we are seeing in fiscal 23, in addition to obviously robust sales and high valued sales on real estate, which I agree we're very cautious in looking at that on a forward looking basis, we are also seeing the rate fully implemented for the first time in fiscal 23.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room, Ms. Backman?
I do not see any, Chair Randall.
I will go to Mayor Rischel as Chair of Finance. Would you like to make this motion?
Yes, ma'am. In the series, 4, 5, and then 6, is that what you're looking for?
Yes. Just we're just doing 4 right now.
Okay, thank you. I move authority adoption of the proposed FY 2023 Regional Revenue Fund budget as presented in attachment A, and FY 2023 project appropriations as presented in attachment B.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will unanimously pass. Thank you. For the item number 5, which is the local distribution fund budget. Ms. Rischel, did you have any comments you want to make on that?
Excuse me, Chair Randall, if we could pause for a minute so we can just reboot for 1 minute, so hopefully we can get the feedback on the room.
Okay, that'd be great.
And Mr. Snyder is also here.
Oh, okay, that's wonderful. Then I don't need the feedback on the room. I can just hand the meeting to Mr. Snyder. If he's ready for that.
Chair Randall, if I may, and I'm in the worst seat to ask this, but I didn't hear a second on.
There was a second. I don't know who made the second, but there was on item number 4. There was a second. I heard a second. Yes, I'm sure they've in the room have wrote down who.
Oh, you won't hear me. I hope they're not talking to us.
For the benefit of those of us on virtual, if you make the second, if you say your name, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
So, but Monica, we can go on and go to item number 5.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Mayor Richard, do you have any comments you want to make before Mr. Lungi makes a presentation on number 5?
Mayor Rishel, she said, did you have any comments on number 5 before Mr. Longi?
No further comments.
All right, Mr. Lungi?
Thank you, Chair Randall. Jonathan, if we can go to table 1 and let me know when you're there. I can be very brief on the next budget, the local distribution fund. The revenue is obviously 30% of the total that came out of the regional revenue fund, or that is 70% of the total. There is no carry forward. There's no beginning balance because we distribute all the money from this fund each year in its entirety. We have the revenue numbers, which we just talked about. We're projecting total revenue at 119 million. All of that will be distributed to jurisdictions. The actual distribution will be based on the actual receipts and the jurisdictions that contributed to those receipts, and we'll end up with a budget balance of 0, meaning again that there's no carry forward on this fund. We distribute everything that goes into it on a monthly basis.
Wonderful, wonderful, as it should be. Are there any questions on this item?
No, Chair Randall.
Mayor Richard, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move the authority adoption of the proposed FY 2023 local distribution fund budget as presented.
Who made the second? Ms. Crystal made the second. Is there discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously, and now I'm going to hand the meeting from item number 6 over to Mayor Snyder, the vice chair, because he is in the room and be a little easier for him to conduct the meeting from the room. Mayor Snyder, would you like to take over on item number 6, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Item number 6, is that right? Okay, adoption.
Yeah.
The 2023 operating budget. It's kind of an important item. Mayor Michelle, would you like to make some comments on that?
No further comments.
No further comments. How about staff? Anything on that?
Mr. Longi, we're turning it over to you.
I'm prepared to do a presentation, but I'll keep it from going too in depth. I'll note that the Finance Committee, along with the other 2 budgets, has worked on this one for several months as well. We include a base budget increase, which is basically inflationary issues and contractual increases. Most importantly, the budget with enhancements, as Mayor Rochelle noted earlier, does include 3 positions. One position is an accounting technician. This is largely driven by transaction volume, making sure that we can keep reimbursements going out, 30% distributions. The authority is approving more projects and having more projects in an active state than the projects are being concluded. And we are at the point where earlier, as the authority built its staffing, we would hire an accountant because you can have an accountant do bookkeeping work, but you can't have a bookkeeper do accounting work. So we're at the stage now where we just need to more resources to handle that increased transaction volume. One other next position is a modeler. The modeling position will allow the authority to meet its strategic plan goals of having in-house modeling capability. NVTA, unlike many other entities, is required to use computerized modeling as part of its project recommendations to the authority. We have done that through transaction, and we have contracted some of that out. Prior budgets have permitted us to build the infrastructure for modeling, including the model licensing, the hardware, which is all cloud-based, data storage, etc. This position, quite frankly, would have come forward earlier. However, the planning staff was very conscientious about making sure that the modeling platform selected would be consistent with the regional users. So we wanted to make sure, obviously, that it was compatible with TPB. Fairfax County, Prince William, Loudoun, and Arlington all contributed a lot to the technical specifications and to where we are today. Again, that infrastructure is largely in place. We now just need the person to operate it. The last of the three new positions is a planning position. And much like the accounting technician position, this position is also related to just transaction volume. But every reimbursement that comes through not only gets attention from the accounting side of the house, it also gets attention from the planning side of the house to make sure it is consistent and compliant with the original application for the project. Additionally, the planning position will allow some specialized activity, such as promoting regional BRT, the transportation technology project, and also improve our federal grant capacity. Excuse me. That is my update on the three positions. We are proposing, the Finance Committee had asked us to look at phasing in some of these expenses because we are, quite frankly, asking for a number of items in one fiscal year. Again, that had we not gone through the pandemic, we probably would have phased these in earlier, but we're at the point where we feel we really do need them at this point in time. So we are proposing to bring the planner on board for a half year and the accounting technician as well as the modeler in effective July 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year. Other initiatives are website modernization. Many of you have heard we've kind of stovepiped our websites. We have, I believe, prior staff and current staff have done a great job of building our websites, but none of them are true web architects. We are starting to feel the pains in maintenance and some disconnects, et cetera, on the websites. We have one big question, and quite frankly, is whether or not we should consolidate it. And that's one of the questions this consulting work will do, and then move forward with moving the websites into a more advanced architecture, et cetera. That is a total $250,000 estimated expense, and we propose splitting it into 2 fiscal years to basically reduce the impact on the on the current fiscal year. But I do want to be upfront with the authority members that it is a total, you're effectively obligating to a $250,000 expense. We're just going to split it up over 2 fiscal years as part of that phasing requested by the committee. 3 smaller initiatives are...
Can you stop there for just a second, if you don't mind? It's a question for the committee, for Ms. Rischel. Ms. Rischel, I actually don't understand I understand how this would be done. I don't understand the rationale for this. I mean, if Monica and MBTA have the capacity to hire people and they have a place to put them and they need them right now, you know, in fact, they've needed them in the past. This is, you know, I've said of MBTA, they have been running too slim, to be quite honest, in my opinion. And so making them phase it in or wait, if we have the finance and they have the capacity, I don't quite know what the rationale is to make them do the phase in. Can you help me with that, Ms. Rischel, as the committee chair?
It is my personal opinion, and that did come up in the committee, and I respect that particular perspective. I think that if we can do it, we should do it. Included in the packet is the economic development contributions that the NBTA has made to Northern Virginia. It takes personnel, it takes the tools to produce that kind of an impact, an economic impact on Northern Virginia. And quite honestly, it takes staff. So I am in sympathy with that particular point of view, that we do it at once. Did I answer your question, Madam Chair?
Well, if I heard your answer correctly, you and I are in agreement.
Yes, we are. I'm agreeing with you, Madam Chair.
So maybe somebody else from your committee can answer the question, because it just seems to me that, again, if we don't have if Monica and the staff doesn't have the capacity to do the hiring, doesn't have spaces to put the bodies, any of those things make sense. Doesn't have the capacity to train people once they get there. But if we have the capacity to do all those things, to wait on hiring people who should have been hired probably 5 years ago to phase it in, I don't understand that. And so if somebody can help me get to that understanding, it'd be really helpful to me.
Yes, ma'am. And I think it was a very careful approach, and I would ask other committee members if they would care to comment.
Chairman Kay raised his hand.
Yeah, I'd be glad to comment. I was one of those that had a little bit different perspective. I think, this organization is pretty small. It's pretty lean, but it has grown significantly over the years. And frankly, I think most of us in county government are looking at a whole lot of vacancies right now. We're certainly not adding staff. We've got challenging budgets of our own to deal with. And, I think that when you have an organization of this size, you have to gradually phase in these kind of positions and see how they're working, and make sure that we can validate the work that's being done. And so I don't have any doubt that there's a need for these positions, but, we have need for a lot of positions in our own jurisdictions as well. It doesn't mean we just grab them all when we can. I think that the gradual approach here, phasing these in, makes sense to manage. As we just talked about earlier, there's some elements of the budget that may or may not be constant as we move forward. And I just think we should approach with caution when we're adding this many positions to a pretty small organization, and make sure that they're being managed in a way that makes sense to the commission, and that we can see in annual budgets what those positions are doing, what they're producing, validate them, and grow into these positions over a period of time. And so, that was my perspective through the meetings. And I, for one, really appreciate the work that's been done to phase some of these in, and recognize that fiscal reality that a lot of us at the jurisdictional level are also living through right now as well.
Well, Mr. Vice Chairman, if I may, so if it's a fiscal issue, that's another issue. If it's a fiscal issue, that makes sense. But if it's a managerial issue, I believe we have I think we have an excellent executive officer who was over MBTA. And if she believes that she can do the management of bringing the positions on at one time and managing them, then that should be left up to her. Now, if it's a fiscal issue, I don't have any trouble. But I don't know that we as the authority are not really involved in the day-to-day management of personnel at MBTA. And so that, for me, wouldn't be an issue. The fiscal issue would be an issue. Not having space would be an issue. Not having capacity to do the hiring would be an issue. But I believe that that's a Miss Backman call, to be quite honest.
Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. Mayor Wood, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was in the meeting as well. I was of the opinion with you, and just to piggyback off your comments, you know, we have positions open and we finance our positions in our budget and we put out the hiring for it, whether we have the vacancies or not, right? So we advertise the positions where the need is. As far as the fiscal standpoint, in our committee, we didn't see a physical need. As a matter of fact, I just highlight what they're doing on the investment portfolio. Earnings is almost 10x what the operating budget is. I think we got 20 million that's just coming in on interest on our investment portfolio. So I don't think it's to answer your question, it's not a budgetary type of issue. And I don't think it's a managerial issue either. I mean, we advertise for the positions from the standpoint, and when they get filled, they get filled.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? So what is the action in front of us today, the proposed action with regard to this?
It's the adoption of the fiscal year 2023 budget as Mr. Longy has outlined. It does include 3 new positions. You as the authority have to make the decision if you want to do the phasing approach or approve all 3 or none or some combination thereof. The staff recommendation is for the 3 positions.
Well, we're approving a budget tonight. We're not necessarily approving management of that budget. So what does the action in front of us say with regard to what's in the budget for the next fiscal year?
It's the 3 positions.
But if I may, Mr. Chair, I mean, I think just looking at the summary, the fully loaded cost of the transportation center, I assume are only for a half year. If we're getting somebody.
We have 2.
Fully loaded at 75,000, right?
Mike, did you hear that question, Mr. Longy?
No.
So I was just saying, if you look at the details, for example, the transportation planner, the fully loaded salary benefits is less than 75,000. So I assume the recommendation in front of us is in fact a phase 1. I assume that's a half year cost of that position.
That's correct. It's a half-year cost for the operating costs, but the fixed costs obviously would be incurred in total in the first fiscal year.
So if we were to adopt the operating budget as presented in attachment A, it would be for the phase 3.
Right.
Yes.
But with regard to when the expenditures are made and when the person's brought on, that's management, right? So we can be careful how we do that. The environment in which we're operating, right? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I can support the budget. I would just say I do think we have to be careful here. I mean, the purpose of MBTA is to build the infrastructure. We know it takes people to do that. But we also know that, you know, in FY 2014, we had 6 positions. And we now will have 17. So I think we just need to, you know, this is something that I think we just need to manage, to be cognizant of. Obviously, MBTA is doing more work than ever and needs people to be able to do that. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that the main objectives of MBTA is to get the infrastructure built. And we just got to make sure we're careful as we move forward, that we're balancing. I disagree with the idea of is it a fiscal issue or not, because at the end of the day, we have to answer for how every dollar coming into this organization is used. And so we do have a role to play in how many positions and how much money we spend on administration. That is very much a fiscal issue that we have to contend with as elected officials every day and in every organization that we're in. And so I certainly don't want to get into the business of managing the day-to-day operations, but I've also got to be able to explain why we put a certain amount of money into some things and not into others, like projects. And so I just think as we move forward, we have to continually be cognizant of that, that is a responsibility that we have to play.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that comment at all. Eric.
Yeah, I just want to kind of elaborate on that. You know, because in 2014, with the staff we had, we was doing significantly less projects. As a business owner, you know, be like this very mad. I expanded capacity and the number of rigs I need to do. I'm doing bigger and larger type events. I need to bring on more people to handle those projects and to take care of those people. Whether I need more cashiers, or I mean, they're doing the same level of projects and service because they want to do more projects, and we need more projects. So you got to bring on and takes people to do that type of thing, infrastructure. So from a business standpoint, like in Dumfries, I've almost doubled my staff during the pandemic because of the number of projects and the development they're doing there. And you have to bring on that capacity in order to grow.
Go to board school.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my question is, the capacity has clearly expanded over the past several years. We are now in April. So then we just have May and June before we start a new fiscal year, correct? We're not talking about a big difference in cost between starting it right now or immediately starting fiscal year, right? Am I missing something or did I misunderstand the timeline? I understand that, but when we would start that.
That's correct.
It seems like we're arguing over a month here or discussing.
6 months, 6 months, 6 months.
I thought we were gonna begin them at the beginning of the fiscal year.
So at least for the report, the question is either they start with the fiscal year or they start in January.
Okay.
January 2023.
And just to follow up, could we get some input? I mean, the staff is saying that they would hope that we can start now this year when the fiscal year starts. Is that right?
Yeah, but we also assume that the management will take a look at the budget and will find savings where possible. If something it can be phased in, it will be, right? We assume that management will constantly look for ways.
We try to keep it lean. I will note the growth in the project. And one thing I should note, since we're doing out years for our programming, by the time some SPAs or projects are ready to move, the scopes have changed. And this is why we had a modeler and an additional planner, because every time there's a scope change, we don't want to have to do an RFP or try to do a contract with the consultant when we really could do it in-house. Because I'm seeing that a lot more, and I think the Commonwealth is seeing it as well with Smart Scale. It's just, the nature of the business when you're doing some of the out year planning. So we would want to bring something in-house to offer cost savings to the project sponsors, which is you all at the table, the localities and agencies as well. So we do try to keep it lean and make it make sense when we have to explain, Mike and myself, to you why we're making the request.
Yes, Member.
I can certainly appreciate what Chairman McKay is saying. What I would like to hear from perhaps Ms. Backman can refresh our memory as to how the NBTA compares with other organizations staffing wise.
I believe, Mayor Risha, we are one of the smallest regional entities, I do air quotes, because we're the newest, I would say, because we're the newer kids on the block, even though we were created in 2002, had money briefly in 2007. But really, it was 2013 when HB 2313 was approved. That's when we really began to take off and do what we were created to do. But we are one of the smallest regional entities.
And especially in the MBTA administers so many projects and also funds those projects and manages a tremendous portfolio. This project load.
Right, and we did we looked at not only regional entities in Northern Virginia, but some of the other transportation authorities and how we fare, and there are some noted differences because we really function as a sub-regional MPO, if I could say that. We're not a federally designated MPO, but we do the planning and the programming, and a step further, we do the funding. And again, I just want to throw out, we pay on a reimbursement basis because we do track the funds to make sure that there is no issues with the project, what we're paying for being having any issues with what the law allows.
I just wanted to point out the complexity of what is done at the MBTA. Thank you for that.
Okay, other questions or comments? It's been an excellent discussion. Messages well delivered. That we're going to be very careful with the expenditures of these monies, and we may be approving the budget tonight, but we expect it to be managed in the most conservative, still effective way possible. Right? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Are we voting on the motion?
Yes, this is agenda item number 6, adoption of the 2023 operating budget. I think that's what we've been talking about. for the last 20 minutes.
Now, I just want to make sure there are no changes to the motion. To seek the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority adoption of the proposed FY 2023 operating budget as presented by the Finance Committee and outlined below.
Second.
Motion is made second. Any further discussion?
So I'm sorry, if I heard you right, the motion that was just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay if I speak. The motion that was just made goes with the Finance Committee's recommendations,
Yes, that is correct.
including the phasing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. That what's in front of you does have the phase. So if the motion on the floor includes what was presented and what Mr. Longy went over, which note the phase.
That's not what we put out of the committee.
That's,
Is that what we put out of the committee?
I'm sorry.
Did we bring out phasing in the committee? I don't remember that conversation.
There was a conversation about phasing.
But that wasn't the motion we made. We go back to the minutes of that. We didn't bring out phasing as a recommendation out of that meeting. Our recommendation was to fully fund these positions.
Mr. Longy?
My apologies, I'm having trouble hearing. Mayor Wood, if the committee had given instructions to pull the phasing, I missed it and left the phasing in. I know there was a strong discussion at the committee level. We could, if the authority chooses to, the motion could be amended to note not to phase, because there's 2 items that are being phased: the planner position and then the website refresh. A notation and a motion to not phase those. We can redo the math pretty
Well,
easily.
Mr. Register,
Yeah.
I would just suggest, and I think this was intimated in your comments. I think all of us who, Mayor included, have been doing hiring or part of the doing hiring. I think that it is. I think it is. I suspect highly unlikely that even if we were to present a substitute motion and vote on it, that you would have somebody to hire July 1.
That is true.
So I suspect, given that there are 3 positions, there will probably be some that come online a little bit sooner than others. As Councilmember Snyder indicated, that would create some savings that could be put if you have a crackerjack candidate and want them to start a little bit earlier. For me, I think the motion on the table, I suspect, in fact, correct me if not, gives them the flexibility to do that. So I really appreciate the point. I think generally we're all in agreement about the spirit here, and I think that's probably pretty well captured in the motion.
All right. People understand what the motion is. Okay.
And I just want to point out that generally we take the more cautious approach, and I think this is the cautious approach of phasing it in. And I think that's why that is the recommendation. Despite what any single one of us would favor, this is the cautious approach.
The motion's been made and seconded. You don't want to withdraw that motion, right?
No, I'll read the
Okay.
motion.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak one more time? So I of course will support the motion, no matter how it's worded, because the positions are needed. I do want it noted that I think that this is, with due respect, micromanaging that need to happen, and quite honestly, but I would never want to. I would never want to vote against this motion because the positions are so important. But I do appreciate the conversation, and it does feel like there may have been a little bit of confusion of the Finance Committee of what actually came out of finance, what was the motion that came out of finance. But given all that and given the conversation, I will support the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Is there any further discussion? Is there any question about what we're voting on? Okay, being none, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item passes unanimously. Thanks a lot. Thanks for an excellent discussion. Right. There's no doubt that we're all on the same page on the fundamentals. Next item on the agenda is item number 7, approval of letters of endorsement for City of Alexandria and Fairfax County's raise applications, Town of Leesburg mega and infrastructure applications the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission's Community Project Funding Application. Ms. Backman, any comments?
I guess I'll hear from me.
Oh, come on, let's have some discussion.
I move authority endorsement of City of Alexandria's raised grant application, grant application in Northern Virginia Transportation Commission's community project funding application.
And we're actually doing this without a PowerPoint presentation.
I feel a little rushed.
I think we're rushed. Mr. Chairman, I deliberately did not hear the mayor say the word Fairfax County. Is in the suggested motion to prove not only that I'm paying attention, but also to make sure his intent was to include that in the motion.
You're not in everything.
We are. We are.
Despite your.
We're definitely in this motion. We're definitely in this motion.
So the item, the motion has been made to approve the item.
There is actually, in Jeff's defense, there is two different versions of this.
The version dated the 14th does have Fairfax.
Isn't it Alexandria and Arlington there? It's not even Fairfax. It's Burgard and King, right?
All right, so are we, I don't understand the motion to be to approve the item number 7 as it appears in the agenda, including Fairfax County.
And Leesburg.
Okay, you guys are at that intersection too?
Oh, Alexandria, oh, that's it. Yeah.
Apparently that intersection has 5 different circulations.
Probably will pass.
King and Burgard.
Motion has been made by Chair Wilson. Is there a second? Second, Senator Boysko. Any further discussion?
Just have a question for information. How many of the localities are put in this? That's Fairfax and Alexandria. Well, I mean, they put in a raise or just in.
On last meeting, there were several raised applications.
Yeah.
So having experienced this from my time at USDOT, that this is just setting friendly expectations. Virginia got shut out last year, the delegation is upset. I think that would be course corrected. So Virginia making it 3 to 4. And I'm thinking one up here, Hampton Roads, Richmond, and maybe Aurora. But when I sat in the room for the senior review team, having so many localities compete against each other in the same area sometimes doesn't benefit. So as you're thinking about that, I will always would encourage every locality to apply, but we should think about maybe, one horse to pick or something as you guys think about it going forward, so you don't cancel each other out. And there were several times in several other states when we were reviewing that actually happened, that competed against each other. In North Carolina, I think around the Charlotte area, they had 8 or 9 in it, and then they got one. So that in mind as you guys move forward on all this. We talk about it individually, to kind of live in that world every day.
It does suggest that if there's a regional approach with subcomponents that serve the jurisdictions, that may be a different approach. So I may ask staff to take a look at that.
It's like everybody apparently is on board for King Burgard. Fairfax,
The good news is there's double the money.
Yeah.
So, but it still comes down to 400 or 500 on the list that goes to the Secretary's office. It becomes kind of a political thing once you get into that level. So just to be aware.
Let's hopefully get that perspective.
Yeah.
Mayor Meyer, did you have a hand up? No?
Well, is there another comment? My comment is on whether the vote is more jocular and support Chairman McKay's earlier inquiry. Like the rib of Adam at Alexandria came out of Fairfax County. Just
Facts matter.
Yeah. Folks can stand Fairfax County. They went to Alexandria.
Wow. He went full old Testament on us on that one. Geez.
Yeah, over 1 million in Alexandria.
What's that?
Got over 1 million in Alexandria.
Motion has been made. Further discussion, citations to other sources. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thanks very much. Discussion and information items, these are, although they're not action items tonight, they're very important. Item number 8, project evaluations for FY 2022.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, I have to actually drop off. I have a thing I have to go to. I want to be here for the action items. I have to drop off at this point.
Thank you very much for being on.
Right. I'm glad you feel better, Jeff, by the way.
Great. Okay, agenda item number 8.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you all are aware, last Friday, we released the 26 projects totaling $1.2 billion for public comment. In your packet is the information we actually released for public comment. It's the score sheets and some of the matrices that detail how the project fared with the performance measures and the congestion reduction relative to cost. The pullout 11/17 is the sheet that I'm referring to. And I don't care what my eye doctor say, I do need glasses because I can't see as well as I used to. But anyway, it has the performance measures, and the last column is the congestion reduction relative to cost rank. And that is how the projects are listed. It's listed towards the seat, listed with the congestion reduction relative to cost rank first. Additionally, we have information that notes the phases that the project applicants have applied for, the local priorities, how the project fared with the 10 performance measures and things of that nature. We also capture long-term benefits, which is important. Even though in December of 2014, the authority adopted or approved, I should say, principles for assessing long-term benefits, which number one would be 10 years look back, and then it was on completed projects. And then you said that 50% of the benefit would be the location where the project or the locality where the project is actually located. What we have done with every funding program, we try to give an assessment of where the localities are for long-term benefits. So all of that information is in the table in front of you. Again, the public comment period opened on April the 15th. We have an open house on May the 4th, which we're utilizing that as an open house, but that's actually the date of the joint public meeting with NBTC, the Commonwealth, VRE. We're using that as the open house. May the 12th is your public hearing. Now, we are going to have a hybrid model where people can come in person to give testimony and they can provide testimony over the phone. We are also accepting written comments. And I can tell you, we are hearing from some communities right now who are saying, hey, we plan to show up in person regarding our project. The public comment period closes on May the 22nd. What we haven't released, because we're still working on the numbers, is the Pago amount. And even though we're calling this a 6-year program update, we're really populating fiscal years 26 and 27. The previous fiscal years, they have been taken care of under previous funding programs. We anticipate coming to you next month at your May 12th meeting. So after the public hearing, there will be a business meeting. And I promise I am going to try to keep it as brief as possible because we just don't know how many people will sign up to speak, whether they're in person or over the phone. But we are going to ask you to approve the Pago amount. That is important because in June, we go back to the committee, your technical advisory committee, your planning coordination advisory committee, and the planning and programming committee. We go to these committees asking them to react to staff recommendations. I will note when we released this information, there was no recommendation. So we released 26 projects that we received. We released the technical evaluation, the total cost, but no funding recommendation was released as a part of that because we want to hear from the public. It is critically important. We have the quantitative analysis and we have the qualitative analysis. And a key part of that is public comment. So I will say again, at your May 12th meeting, after the public hearing ends, we will ask you to approve the Pago amount. Because once you do that, staff, we can take some of the comments that we're hearing. We can go to the committee cycle in June. And I say June because your public comment period doesn't end until May 22nd. will go to the committees in June with the staff recommendation. Having said that, the recommendation that will come to the authority at your July 14th for you to take action on it will be the recommendation from the Planning and Programming Committee. Even though we will also have the recommendations from the Technical Advisory Committee and the Planning Coordination Advisory Committee. So I will pause there to see if there are any questions. And let me just go back to some of the scores. Congestion reduction relative to cost is something that we are to give priority to. Our enabling legislation identifies other performance measures that we also have to look at. And then this is where some of the quantitative meets the qualitative analysis. Long-term benefits is something we also look at. Modal balance and geographic distribution. So we try to marry all of these things when we are bringing forth a recommendation, in addition to comments from the public.
Quick question. If jurisdictional staff have a question about the technical rankings and maybe have concerns and want to raise issues, so they have an opportunity to do that with you.
So, Councilmember Snyder, they should have done that previously. They saw this long before it was actually released for the public. The project sponsors received this information last month, Street.
As we finished the analysis, we met with each applicant, staff members, and explained to them what these results are. And we had a back and forth. We took the feedback. If there were any concerns, we went back and checked the models and the things to come up with changes required. We made all those adjustments before even finalizing this table. And then even after finalizing this table, we shared with the applicants. And we gave another 1 week for them to get back to us with this task. We had 2 opportunities. First opportunity where we had more in-depth discussion. Second time showing that this is the result, final results. And so we had 2 different sets of opportunities for staff to review and give us feedback. We took all that feedback.
But if there are additional comments, we'll certainly entertain them. But the point Mr. Nampiri is making, before we ever release this information, we did circulate it with the project sponsors because we didn't want to release it without them having the opportunity to review, go over it, and tell us of any concern.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So of this group of projects that we're looking at, are you saying that there's going to have to be a narrowing down of who's going to be selected? Or do we think that
there will be a narrowing down because even though we're working on the revenue estimates or the Pago amount, we won't have $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
We just won't have it.
All right. Any further discussion on this one? Now, let me go back to the timetable. You read it out. I'm not going to ask you to repeat it. Are you expecting MBTA members to be here on May 4th?
So May 4th is the open house. Of course, any authority member who would like to attend. I do know that some of the chairs of the other entities are planning to be at that meeting. Secretary Miller is actually planning to be at that meeting because the Commonwealth is you're using that as your public open house for the 6-year improvement program. So authority members, definitely, if you would like to come, but we are going to have the open house. And let me clarify, the open house will start at 5:30, correct, Erica? Right. And then we get into the meeting, per se, at 7.
Right, and this is at VDOT's Nova District office.
Normally, we would have the open house immediately prior to the public hearing, but because we are required to have this annual joint public meeting, we thought this was a great opportunity to take advantage of this public meeting and utilize it as the open house.
So I guess the recommendation is we should all be there on May 4, or if it's.
I would say, so we are going to have staff present, and when we say staff, EVGA staff, in addition to some of the project sponsor staff, to speak to and address any questions, comments, or concerns about the project. Of course, authority members, when the meeting starts, the actual meeting starts at 7 p.m., I think that would be a good time for any authority member to show up, unless you want to come and talk about the project with us and your staff. What's critical is the May 12th public hearing. The public hearing will start at 7 p.m. and it will conclude when the last person has given testimony. We are asking people to sign up and pre-register, but again, since this is a hybrid model where people can come in person or give testimony over the phone, if people are still coming in, we will be here.
And you're saying after that, there'll be a business of the authority.
There will be, but I have one action item and at this time, and that is approval of the Pago amount. And we really need you to do it at the May meeting because again, the committee cycles in June. We need to know a number that we're working with so the committees can have an idea of what's the cutoff.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions about the expectations? There being none, next item on the agenda, item number 9, programming recommendations, congestion mitigation. Program.
So, Mr. Chairman, we were notified by VDOT who provided some revisions that added money for CMAQ and RSTP, about 14.9 million in CMAQ funds and 62.5 million in RSTP funds we were told we have additional funds to make some programming recommendations on, covering fiscal years 2022 through 2028. We worked with the RJAC and some of the project sponsors to make recommendations. Because these are added monies and we're not adding a new fiscal year, a few years ago, you gave us authority for projects that have been previously approved and vetted by the authority that we can go in and try to make these recommendations. We did make the recommendations, the chart, and you'll need some magnifying glasses to try to read that, but it is included in the packet, barring no concern from you all. And again, you have seen these projects before. These projects have been approved by the authority before. We will send this off to VDOT so that they can make sure it's sent to the CTB, and adoption will be at the June CTB meeting.
Any questions about this? Always good. Whoever brought the additional money, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's all I have on that one. And we do have an update for governance and personnel. Tracy Boehner had a conflict this evening, but her associate Margaret Rockwell is online to update us on the General Assembly.
Thank you. You're on.
Margaret?
Hi, yes.
Okay.
I can hear you. Okay, wonderful. Hello, everybody. My name is Margaret Rockwell. I'm an associate of Tracy Boehner here at McGuire Woods Consulting, and I'm here to provide you all with a legislative update this evening. This should be number 10 in the packet. There's a memorandum, and so I'm going to be reviewing some details within that. At the top of the memorandum, the first paragraph, it says that we are still in, the Virginia General Assembly is still in special session, and there's no indication on when they'll return for a vote on the budget, as well as a vote on the 45 non-budget bills that will carry over into special session. So this was written on April 15th, and I wanted to confirm that this is still the case today. Governor Youngkin did complete his review of the legislation that was adopted during the regular session. He sent back 117 amended bills and 26 vetoed bills. So the General Assembly will be meeting again on April 27th to review these amended and vetoed bills and take action on those. I do want to provide a quick update on a few items of interest that will be discussed during that April 27th reconvene, and they're listed here as well. The first one you can see on the page before that, which is on the screen right now, is the transit ridership incentive program legislation. This is HB 142, and the equivalent is SB 342. To give some context, this was currently in today, there is a maximum of 25% of funds that can be used from the Transit Ridership Incentive Program that are used for supporting the establishment of programs that reduce the impact of fares on low-income individuals. What this bill did was it flipped that from a maximum of 25% to a minimum of 25%. So now the bill makes it so that at least 25% of the funds must be used for the establishment of programs that reduce the impact of fares for low-income individuals. Additionally, the bill ensures that at least 25% of the funds will be used to support regional transit initiatives. And this is new language in the bill. Governor Youngkin did amend this bill, and his amendment implements an expiration of that minimum 25% for the establishment of programs to reduce the impact of fares. So on July 1st, 2024, that will be flipped back to a maximum. So that has been amended. The other portion, the other 25% to be used for supporting regional transit initiatives was not amended. So we'll see what happens with that when the General Assembly reconvenes. The next bill of interest is on the next page, or no, sorry, I'm sorry, this is my bad. Yeah, it's still on this page. It is HB 443, and this one Governor Youngkin signed. This bill allows local park authorities to locate, operate, and regulate the use of EV charging stations on their property. And I'm sorry that right now is right when the vacuums come in the office. I'm just gonna ask them if they can hold off for, I'm sorry. Okay, they're gone. I forget when you're in the office, it's late, my bad, sorry. Okay, so this bill will come into effect on July 1st, 2022. Lastly, the next bill of interest is HB 444. Now this one is on the next page. Thank you. This one also Governor Youngkin signed. This permits any public body outside of a few exceptions to conduct all virtual meetings outside of a declared state of emergency. The bill does not apply to local governing bodies, local school boards, planning commissions, architectural review boards, zoning appeals boards, and any board that has the authority to deny, revoke, or suspend a professional or occupational license. But for all other boards, it does apply. It also requires the FOIA Council to convene stakeholders to develop best practices for holding all virtual meetings. And this legislation becomes effective a little bit later than the other ones. It will take effect on September 1st, 2022. So just to remind everybody that we'll know more of what happens with HB 142 once we see the General Assembly reconvene on April 27th. In the meantime, we're continuing to watch for the development of the budget, and as well as 3 other ongoing initiatives that will reduce available transportation funding if passed. The first of those is HB 90, and the equivalent to that is SB 451. These bills will either partially or fully eliminate the grocery tax, but both bills eliminate the 0.5% that provides dedicated funding for transportation without backfilling. And note that this language also appears in both budget bills as well. Another provision that we're watching is embedded in the House version of the budget bill. And this is specific language that would roll back 5 cents of the state gas tax during FY23. So we'll know more about this once we see what budget comes out of negotiations, whether that language is still within the budget's language still. On the same topic of gas tax, we are watching HB 6001, which was introduced when the General Assembly reconvened on April 4th to set the rules for the special session. This was introduced by Delegate Durant, and it does a few things. The first is that it temporarily suspends the state gas tax for 3 months. So that would be a 100% reduction from May 1st to July 31st. After that, it gradually returns the tax over 2 months. And that would be 50% reduction from August 1st to August 31st, and then a 25% reduction from September 1st to September 30th. Lastly, it caps annual indexing at 2%, which is about a $40 million annual impact. I attended the House Finance meeting earlier this week in which they discussed this bill. And Secretary Miller provided some points about, or when he was presenting the details of the bill. So I wanted to review some of those as well. He noted that the revenue impact of HB 6001 on the FY22 through FY24 budget is about $470 million. That's about a 12% reduction in motor fuels tax over the 2-year period. This also represents about a 3% reduction in CTF revenues during that same period. Some points in support of this bill was that the reduction does not impact any project in the current 6-year improvement plan. This was also noted by Secretary Miller that the next update won't be voted on until June 2022 for FY23 through 28. And the SCTB approved amendments to the FY22 through 27 6-year improvement plan in January that programmed almost the same amount that will be lost. The money was put into specific programs and not projects, which was noted of importance. So technically they aren't taking any money away from current projects, but but then other people voiced their opinion that you could be limiting money available for existing programs or to programs for new projects or accelerating existing projects. Some more points that Secretary Miller noted is that this is real money being talked about, but that no current projects are going to be impacted or slowed. That there's an exceptional amount of revenue that Virginia didn't expect, and this is giving some of that back to the Commonwealth citizens. This provides relief to Virginians now, he said, which is needed in this time of inflation and economic trouble. Some individuals who voiced opposition to this bill noted the following: that there is a concern that rising cost of materials brings into question whether there will be enough funding for FY23 through 28 maintenance projects. Simply put, the money isn't going as far as it did when it was first budgeted. Additionally, transit operations also depend a lot on having sustainable revenue, and capping the index at all, let alone 2%, when is hard for some others to understand when the current cost of materials and labor is running far ahead of that 2% and is expected to do so for some time going forward. So at the end of the House Finance meeting, it was referred to the Senate Finance and Appropriations, which will meet on April 27th, which is the same day that the General Assembly will reconvene for veto session. The Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee meeting is at 9 a.m., but no agenda has been posted yet. And that concludes my update.
Thanks a lot. Could you repeat that, please?
It's a lot, I know. Hopefully the written language there provides some good details. I wanted to kind of supplement those, and please do let me know if you have any questions.
I know we have members of the General Assembly here. Are there any comments you want to make? Bills or about things in general? Very much appreciated.
Yeah, so I'll start. I am the patron of the grocery bill. I would just like to clarify, I have carried a bill that deals with menstrual products for many years, and I inherited the grocery portion of it without soliciting the opportunity. After speaking with our negotiators on the conference on the Senate side, at least, the understanding is that there will be as you heard, we have the money today to pay for the things that we need to do. There is a pledge, a gentleman's agreement that there will be a solution to finding those lost revenue dollars for transportation. I personally have concerns. I am not one to want to lose transportation dollars. It is part of the budget negotiation at this point, and we will see what happens when we have the finished product. On the gas tax, I mean, we have heard from every local government every transportation-related organization and company expressing grave concerns about the gas tax. And I do not think there are going, I should never say never, but I think there's a lot of heartburn about that in the Senate specifically. And I think that Senate members, hopefully the majority of the Senate members are looking at other ways to give relief to residents of Virginia without further losing these valuable revenue dollars. I think there's a real understanding that over the past couple of years, we've really gotten back on track with transportation funding, and there's not a big appetite that I am aware of to see us go backwards. So that's the Senate position. I understand there's probably a pretty drastically different position in the House.
Sure, the joint session debates and things.
I mean, imagine us doing that, yeah. But I think, you know, people are looking at the federal dollars that we have coming in, and they're making some assumptions that we have more than we need. The tax revenues in general in Virginia have been really good, the income tax. And so I think it's the governor's interest in trying to give money back to residents. I think we need to do that without harming our transportation system. And that is my commitment to my community, especially up here where we don't have, I mean, we just looked at that sheet that showed the $1 billion of revenue needs, and we're looking at cutting that, so.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
Delegate Laurel.
Yeah, I'm in agree in concept with the initiatives. I think the 2% indexing has me a little bit concerned about Delegate Durant's bill. I'd like to hear perhaps a little bit more conversation from Mike or any of the people in the room that understand the effect of that, not only in an inflationary period, but when versus is going to affect the retracting economy. To make sure that there isn't a better way to approach this. We still have the opportunity to amend the bill. I think that's what it's trying to accomplish, but this doesn't work in an inflationary situation as we're in now. Like, that try to get a money person to say amen to that. Is Mike with us still?
I'm not, but can I say amen?
Yeah.
Yeah, is anybody on, Mike?
Mike, he's on. Did you hear that? We need you to come off mute.
Yes, sorry. Inflation is running much higher than a 2% rate, and it's projected to run, I think, in the best of scenarios, at least 2 more years at an accelerated rate.
Well, I think in response to Delegate Laurent's question, I think we could provide more information in writing on that and really give the delegate some more detail on that. What inflation are you running? What are the goods and services we're talking about? That kind of. That's helpful. Yeah.
The cap at the 2% CPI-U is the consumer price index for urban areas. So it will be, I mean, while a 2% cap on that index will be a little bit higher than, a broader, it's still going to be a lot lower than the overall rate of inflation.
And I also think that the kinds of things that we're talking about are probably not at the average CPI level, based on what I know. So, okay, good. Well, we're committed to Delegate Laurent getting information that you can use in your work there. Thank you both for the work in Richmond. All right, anything else on the legislative? Yes.
When Margaret was speaking, I thought the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee is scheduled to meet on April 26th is what it says, but I thought she said 27, so I want to make sure I had the right date. Because I wrote down 27 when she was talking.
You're still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. It is the 27th. I apologize if I said the 26th. It's the 27th.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions? Thanks very much for the report. And again, thank you for the work.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, Finance Committee report. Mayor Ruscio. Why you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee last met on March 10th. Most recent work of the committee was regarding the budgets that were addressed earlier this evening. Well, first of all, I would like to turn it over to Sam to provide more details about the investment portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the benchmark comparison chart on page 3 of the staff report, you'll see the portfolio is positioned exceptionally well as the yield started to increase faster compared to other benchmarks. The yield increased from October 2021 on an upward trend. In this rising interest rate market, we are cash flow positive as we are continuing with the strategy laid out by Mr. Longi on reinvesting $30 million a month in maturity. So our typical cash flow is positive between 40 to 48 million, which includes 10 to 18 million in the new monthly sales taxes. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Next item. Monthly revenue report. Already. They're all in writing.
Yeah, they are.
Is there anything else in your report you'd like to mention? Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for the a lot. Planning and Programming Committee.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. We did meet. We got updates on the 6-year program, the transaction, and general update. Meetings are scheduled for May and June.
Any questions from Mayor Wilson? Mayor Colbert, Planning Coordination Advisory.
And Mr. Chairman, that report and your technical advisory committee reports are in the packet. We met with both committees. They did see the ratings and materials that was released for public comment, and we will go back to the committee cycles in June to get additional information. We are also going to meet with the next month as well.
Okay, thank you. So it's items 13 and 14. Item 15, Transportation Technology Committee report. That's me. You have a report in your package. If you have any questions, let me know. Any questions? What locality is they from? What's that? Oh,
she's the town.
Vienna.
Oh, she's the mayor of town of Vienna.
Okay.
You're forgetting the other. Keep your manners in order.
That's normally like a Jeff.
Mayor's around.
I'm telling you.
7 through 13, 14, and 15, Chief Executive Officers from business background.
So, Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I would note that's not in the report, as we ask you to adopt the 6-year program update at your July 14th meeting, at that meeting, we will also ask you to approve the public comment period for transaction. As a reminder, we are doing the update to transaction at the same time, if you will, as we're doing the 6-year program update. So we will ask you to approve the public comment period for the transaction update at your July meeting. We are looking at a December adoption of the transaction. Your current transaction plan was adopted October 2017. We try to update transaction every 5 years. Even though it's only a 5-year period, there are a lot of changes. This transaction update will have a lot of technology and a lot of the things that we talked about you adopted as part of your transportation technology strategic plan. But I do want to just remind everyone, transaction isn't the funding document. We don't have enough money to fund everything in transaction. Their current transaction plan, and this was a few years ago, if we were to fund every project, that was $47 billion. And that was only capital. That didn't include operations and maintenance. But my point is, transaction is more of a needs-based document. We look at any gaps or any needs. It's fiscally and geographically unconstrained. There are projects in transaction that we legally cannot fund because they are not in Virginia. But again, transaction does set the tone for the projects that you can fund, because projects that we fund with the regional revenues must be in the transaction plan. But again, we are working on the transaction update. We did want to put some spacing between the public comment period for the 6-year program update before we announce the public comment period for the transaction update. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thanks a lot. I just want to underscore a point you made.
Oh, Tree, did I miss them?
May 19th.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me go back. Tree, go ahead, because I can't, I'm having trouble with my eyes. I can't see.
Ms. Pago just mentioned about transaction update going on at May 19th. We have a work session of the authority to go over the evaluation research, right, preliminary research that comes out of the transaction. What you saw in your packet today is a 6-year program evaluation research. Currently, we are working on the long-range plan evaluations too. So that May 19th work session is where we would like to present that research to you and get your feedback before we finalize that analysis.
And that work session will be at City of Fairfax. This conference room was unavailable, so we are meeting, thank you, Mayor Meyer, at the City of Fairfax, so we will send you additional details.
Yeah, in fact, maybe you could send us a calendar, because now this is looking like May is MBTA month.
It is. It's a lot of dates, but you know, the key dates, May 4th and May 12th. And since May 12th is your public hearing, we will try to have a nice dinner for you.
I know somebody that's an expert in that. All right.
No, that's all I have.
Chair's comments, absolutely not. Anybody have anything else I want to bring up? No need for a closed session.
No, we do not.
We take a motion. All together. Thank you all.
Yeah. All right.